Yeah, I think I will continue on what we have been talking and trying to finish the next phase as like the first step. And then we just skip a few sort of result as descriptively we find that there's a small group that they have been getting more and more content, which falls into the category of far-right extreme content. And then we saw that they are watching more. And then we looked at a few more stuff, for example, referral modes as how they find the content. And then what we saw that there are a lot of the traffic is coming from search, subscription, and then we call that's more of like a notion of the user choice and user agency when they are finding content. So trying to see, beside the assumption of like you find a video just through the ranking, what are the other channels? We found that like about 30 to 40% is coming from external websites like your Gmail, Facebook, and like WhatsApp. That's where you actually click on, and then you come to a video on YouTube. So those are all the cases that you cannot attribute this viewership to the recommendation algorithm. We also found that like people tend to stay in their community. So that means that like there is this like echo chamber, like this is how like echo chamber will look like if you want to think of it. And then we see that actually, there's a pointer. It doesn't have a pointer. Oh, it's not. So oh yeah, the screen reader also is it that one? Oh, okay. Yes. So so this is the part that we would say that actually people tend to stay in their community. This is showing the transition metrics as like transition of people from watching content from far right and then far right in the next month. And then we could see that, yes. So this is another thing that says on one hand, people tend to stay in their community, which is more like echo chamber. On the other hand, when we looked at other signals, we found that like actually, if you look at like what people are consuming solely on YouTube, we could see that this is a viewership on Fox News. And then we were like, is this user preference or platform choice? And then we said, to get a better sense, we could see that like, who is this user? And then we look at all the consumption of this user outside YouTube, meaning that like, if I actually see that this user is watching something very similar on the web, which is that you just type in and then you find this content, then this is like that a heavier signal toward user preference. And then if we see that for this user outside the platform, this user is watching something very different, then we would have this heavier assumption or like heavier weight for the assumption that is actually the platform somehow taking someone who is watching only AP and then on YouTube making this person to watch actually something very different. The other thing was like, yes, referral modes. We define referral modes as like, how do you find the content? Is it through search? Is it like jumping from another platform? So when we look at all of these together, and then I want to go a little faster so we can talk about the next step, we found that, yes, in fact, what we are learning is that, going back to here, yes. So what we are learning is that, yes, there's a small group exists, they consume more, there's a mixed signal. Some of them is coming from the preference. Some of them are saying that this is a platform. So how we can disentangle, because yes, all of them contribute, but how we can disentangle the contribution of these two. And then the problem was like that, okay, this is how far you can get from like observational data, panel data. You just observe, but you don't know how things are happening. So, and then for me, the bottleneck was, okay, this is what I am observing as like these users on YouTube are watching this and this and that. But what I want is like a counterfactual world where there is no algorithm, like maybe similar to your case that you could create that with just randomization. So let's say as independent researcher, for me would be like, how can I create these where that there's like millions and billions of content on YouTube? And then all I want is just grab a random set and just compare. So then I couldn't create this board. So if I want to go more cuddle, I couldn't remove the algorithm.
came up in Rishi's talk as well, but like, why is random the right counterfactual?
No, I don't, to me, the right one is like the word that there's no algorithm. Oh, like there's no algorithm, so it's like that maybe logical as somebody upload, but imagine like there would be a word with no algorithm. So
Well, if I YouTube doesn't make so much sense.
Yeah, like
Then you have search.
let's take for granted we have 10 watch next things that we can populate on this webpage. I almost like don't understand what is defined as like the neutral counterfactual.
I think it doesn't need to be neutral, it's supposed to like, you should just think of like, what else? I think this was the discussion that we had to some sort of like, what else? What is the other word that you want to compare it? The other word would be just personal first serve, like I'm the last person who uploaded my content is like at top and then people can watch it. Or the alternative can be just you search for it, people randomly find, but it's like the discussion or like the big question is like, what is a good alternative that you want to compare it? And then say, compared to this alternative, this ranking is not good. And then it can be random, it can be like logical, it can be like something else that you want to define. But imagine is like that, if I want that something which is pure user, maybe I want search. I want to say, there's this portal, I only do the search. And then I have like all the content in that. Maybe it's not also a good one, but anyway, like let's just imagine there's an alternative that you want to compare with.
TikTok is doing most popular for so under DSA, you can opt out of the algorithm. So I guess the underlying principle is that it has to be history free. And so on a platform like TikTok or YouTube, it's not clear what that would be. So at least for now, TikTok is going with most popular, which I guess like is also the average person's
I think if it was truly random, it would be that like, okay, you are like, you have like 10 billion, like possibilities for the video content, and then what do you want to do? Like pick something random. So that's how it can be. There's no role of algorithm.
I think in the world of no algorithm, I guess the benchmark is like, some human, like curating some sort of content, right? It's like if we think about informational content, if we think about like news media, etc., the benchmark is, but like the human is definitely not neutral. Human editors and like how they place stuff, it must be based on popularity. But the current regulatory are like either you opt out or it's like reverse chronological in some sense. That's like, okay, whatever was most recent sort of comes up.
Yeah, but I guess I have a hard time in the context of YouTube, where they must have 10 videos posted a second to even like understand how something like reverse chronological is feasible.
I think the bigger picture is just you cannot not filter it, so there cannot not have questions which one who gets to decide what the algorithm
Everything is an algorithm. Everything, any ranking is an algorithm. A human is an algorithm. Right?
maybe broadcast, but that is also
Entirely.
So anyways, for your research,
I think for me it was like anything else that I could compare with, so I can say if it wasn't this one, and I am like a god.
It's making a conceptual point where you're not like talking about specific.
Yes, I'm just saying like imagine there was no a word without algorithm, and then I wanted something random, that there's no influence of an algorithm ranking on.
yeah, I guess as a consequence of this discussion, I'm having a hard time imagining that world. Do I need to do that to understand what you're going to do next?
Oh no. No, I don't think that like here we need to know like what we get, like the counterfactual. Yeah, let me just continue and then we will just and I'm curious to learn like more like how you are thinking, but so yes, I think the problem is like here is a mix of like There's a user side, which only the user can decide. There's an algorithm side that there's no user agency. And then how we have been trying to solve this problem was like, if I can actually go pure algorithm, and then I could compare it with these mix of user and algorithm, which I'm observing from like, let's say observational panels, then I could guess what is the role of the user. Here's what I'm trying to, this is my approach into trying to disentangle, as I have observed that you as a user are watching A, B, C, D as a sequence of videos. What I want to know is like that, what is the role of user agency and what is the role of algorithm? And then here I'm like that, if I would just create a word which is purely algorithm and then compare it with this one, then I would say if you have listened to the algorithm, if the word would be better or not. That's what I have been trying to make there.
But like, I guess to the discussion, there's no, you always have both, right? There's no, you're not going to show the user all videos on YouTube, and you're not going to just show videos to avoid the user. So there's, it's
Yeah.
really likely what it means to have one. And even if it's
So you
just
are
kind of
asking
purely
how am
user
I
text
creating,
search.
you are asking how am I creating this one? That I have like the algorithm, the user to have no agency and only going through the algorithm. Is that the
Right,
question?
the recommendation is presumably based on what you watched or something. Just,
Oh, yes, yeah, definitely. It's personalized.
and if the pure user is search, then there's a search engine that filters something for you.
Yes, so sorry, yeah, here it was like that, if it's just pure user, and then I could say that like, what is the effect of algorithm, but if I have here, which is pure algorithm, and then, but actually my point is I want to have user with history, which is closer to the yesterday afternoon talk, that I don't want to have a very isolated word. I want to say, yes, this is personalized, this is recommending stuff to you only based on what you are interested in. But let's assume that like you would listen more to the algorithm compared to incorporating your agency. I think we can just think of it like that. But very much we want to have personalization, meaning that there's a rule that like algorithm is recommending you the item. And here what has been argued was like that. So I want to say that like you are this user, and then you have been watching for 6 months, you have been watching far right videos. And then I want to know that like, what if you would, I want to know like if it's you clicking, to what extent, and to what extent is algorithm contributing. So I would say, if I could have a copy of you, and then I would say, you know what, don't use your preference and agency, just watch something randomly from the sidebar. And then I would say, okay, you are not using your agency, you are choosing something randomly from sidebar, whether.
But that's already a function of the prior agency of the history.
But it's yeah, I don't think that would be a problem. So definitely what is in your feed in the rank for you is different. I'm just talking about you. I'm just saying that you have the freedom at this point. If you choose something randomly, would it that be your rank item be so full of far right content that you will be pushed toward more extreme content? Or actually, what is the direction of the exposure from here? And these similar examples is like if somebody says that, okay, I watched like 10 far right videos, from there I didn't have any choice. Everything in my sidebar was far right. So that's what I'm trying to understand, or my question here was like that. Is it that like you're telling me this, but if I could mimic and then I could create the ranked item based on your history, and then I could have you to just select something else rather than just looking for what is exactly matched with your preference, then how would you experience, you know, like passing through YouTube? Again, I think for me, how I'm trying to audit the platform is the experience of the user, not the algorithm in isolation. I want to know that like if a user has created a history, is living there, is interacting, to what extent you can change your experience in the platform.
I think that makes sense. Do you have a sense of what proportion of traffic comes from like what's recommended on the side?
For the real user,
for real users?
that's what we don't know exactly. We don't know like, we don't know like, if a user is just watching, I don't know if it's like an algorithm or like, let's say it's autoplay, what is happening. You just choose the top one. I don't know how you are getting that information. But what I want to know is that like, let's say this is you have a profile, an archetype of viewership, and then you are here in the platform, and then I want to know like, if you want to change like your feed, if you want to have like some other scenario, what would you do? And it's very similar to the filter bubble idea, as like that at some point, this is all the recommendation is showing you. So then you don't have any agency anymore. It's like that's what you have been exposed to. So yeah, so this is what we are trying to do. And then we say, okay, this is you. And then at this point, I create multiple copy of you. Like this will continue to be you. And then I will have like different scenarios that the agency is gone. There's a, you know, like a very rule-based person who's like deciding here. And then I'm telling this person that like, you just select something based on my rule.
It's almost the opposite of what Arushi did, right? Like Arushi switched off the algorithm usage.
Exactly.
So
That's the whole point. That like for me, I'm saying that I cannot switch the algorithm. I can switch the human. And then I would say that suddenly you are decided to be like a person who is only getting news from BBC and ABC and mainstream. And then how would your experience change in the platform? So we are just trying to create this counterfactual word based on like, this is what you, the word that you lived, and then these are the other words that you would experience on YouTube. So as you all mentioned, that's true, like we have the learning phase, these are the real users. So if you just go to your YouTube trajectory, then you can see that like everything is recorded, right? You watch this thing for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, and then, so we just take the exact dynamic, and then we have an automated account. This automated account will just go and watch one video for 10 minutes, the other one for 20 minutes, and then there's a pause. So the bot will just not watch anything and then try to be very slow and then mimic the dynamic of the viewership. We don't limit to news only. We don't say that only watch the news. We want the whole heterogeneity. The only thing about the users that we select is that the majority of their news consumption is coming from far right. These are the users actually selected from the first study. We found those users. We were wondering that like if these users actually are self-selecting to their filter bubbles, or if these users have been pushed toward those. So then we take their profile on the news side is far right, but in the middle, they watch a lot of entertainment, like random cat dog videos, and then we don't drop them. So just create like 5 or like, for this study, I think 4. So we just create 4 different copy, and there are 4 accounts that they are identical. And then from there, we just say for the ones which are our treatment arms, we just say, okay, just please don't use your preference. Forget the fact that you were very interested in far right content, and let's see what will happen to you. So, and then we have 2 different experiments. One is that we wanna measure the bias of the recommendation, and then we wanna study the forgetting time or stickiness of the algorithm. We wanna see how fast the algorithm will forget about what you are very much into. And then here we just keep like recording what is being recommended. And then from the list that is recommended, we just act based on some rule. So what are our rules? We just say that like, so this is a real user, and then we know that like, this is what the actual user has done. And then we know that this user has a lot of like far right videos here. And then up to, from here, we just have like, these are the items which are ranked by the sidebar. So you just select the up next and then only rely on the up next. And then this is trying to mimic this notion of like, if you just rely to the autoplay, then definitely autoplay will just steer you toward the filter bubble and extreme content, low quality content. So this is what this one is trying to see that is it true that like the up next feature is really doing some harm. And then we just say, just pick something randomly. And then this is your sidebar, this is personalized, and now your options are different from mine. And it has more of the content which match to your preference, but just pick something randomly. You know, just give it some like, don't just go and search for something that you really love. And then we want to see if actually randomness make things worse because there's a lot of far right content there. Also, like we have this one that we say, imagine that this person goes to the homepage because the homepage and sidebar are different.
So just to understand, so what you wanted bots that uses always up next, and another set of bots that randomly picks sidebar.
Yes, yes. If there's always this pair, like not pair, like this is like this 4 accounts as like, these are the digital twins of this one, which is the real user. And we always compare these 4 together.
Just check on the up next, is that the end card? Because I think at the end of the video, there's also a big end card that is the definitive.
There is,
representation.
there's one video among them, which is the up next.
Okay.
Yes, there's one of those videos that is actually the up next.
I think, yeah, I
And then
think
but
I caught
also
that,
there's the, yes, that can be like another arm that like, what if you just select something randomly from there?
And just sorry, the control, what exactly are they doing?
That's you. That's like, this is what you have done. This is your experience. And then I want to compare how would your experience be different.
But the control in this case is people carry on selecting actively far right videos.
So
That's
the control is that I know based on the first study, which was descriptive, I know that there is a mix of agency and algorithm. It's both. Like for you, we know that like that the contributing factors is supply and demand and agency and algorithm, right? There's multiple. And that's how we are trying to say that this is like taking away your agency. And to me here, kind of like loosely, the treatment is taking away your agency. Your agency is like that you like something more or less, but this one, what it's doing is that like, yeah, from here on, just go randomly. Don't think of that I was here to watch.
Just continue. I understand the arms, the control is just continuing doing what you've observed someone.
This is already observed, this is the user, so this arm is just exactly what the user already did.
It just continue doing.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, so this
If they're in a loop, whatever.
yeah,
has spiral, they
this would
continue
just
to-
continue watching what the real user is watching. And then I'm just comparing these 2 together, and I wanna know like, if here there's more accumulation of far right, which already I measured, that real user did. And then here I wanna see how many far right this user has watched, how many far right this version of you has watched.
Does it matter? So with these focal users, there's like a version of this experiment where you want to only condition the definition of focal user on the learning phase and not on the observation phase. Like this shows up a lot in environments, right? You don't want to look at the stocks that do well over the whole sample. You want to like sort of go up to the moment in time and then look at the future.
So we don't look here when we are selecting. So
Exactly.
yes, exactly, yeah. So we just see that, we just assume that we see up to here. We group the users, create these archetypes, and this user is a heavy consumer of far right. Then from here on, I don't know what is happening actually.
But it could be that they just
Yeah.
watched Big Bang
Yes.
Theory for hours.
Yes, that can,
They're done with their far right thing.
exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So it's just, and then we just look at aggregate. Some people are watching less, some people are watching more. Yes. Yeah, and then so my background is not economy, so I'm not very good into using the term correctly, but it's just loosely for me was very intuitively, this is what I wanted to do. And then I'm more like the yesterday talk is like engineer that I want to say, if I could implement this, what I would observe.
So apparently, leaked Facebook files, they showed that Facebook in India did an experiment very similar to this, where they created a bot which would just click on the first thing, which was like, so there was no learning phase there. They just created a new user who were a bot who clicked on the first thing. and they found that within 1 week, the bot was part of like the most right-wing Hindu nationalist
Oh, really?
groups on Facebook. So I'm just trying to sort of like
I think it's
trust that with.
every single detail, like other, like these bots, they existed forever. The idea of like bots going, clicking on something. And then every study, even now after this one, you look, we have different findings. It all depends on like, how do you create them? If I just start from like no history, a bot which is just watching, and then they show that like after 100 video, you watch content which is 5% more extreme, and I don't know what is extreme, that 5% more is meaningful, not meaningful. So the narratives are based on some underlying assumption that is really hard to compare.
Yeah, and also those papers weren't published, right? They were
There was like, so we didn't get any attention for this study because of the conclusion, but there was like, and then we had like all like everything relying based on real user, and then there was another study, they just used 2 bots. And then they showed exactly the opposite. So exactly opposite finding with just 2 accounts.
So then based on this conversation, and I think we will do this offline as well, could it be that they are identifying these bots as bots?
Yeah, I think that can, so based on like, we try, as I said, like we try to have our real, we buy the phone and then we try to actually watch, and then we like through a pilot, we compare. Through our pilot, no, it didn't happen. And we are getting more and more evidence that they cannot detect it. Specifically, if they detect you, they will block you because we are doing against platform rules. So my assumption is like that and then for like, if you just make it really fast and like unrealistic, they here, like you have a lot of signals that like, did you like this? Click on that, like opinion, survey, we have all of these coming up. And then we have to click and bypass and then provide input for the algorithm. And that's my assumption that like, it seems like, and then we have open the Chrome so we can monitor like, yeah. But again, we keep thinking about that as is like that we just keep comparing in pilot with what a human is doing. The point is that if we do it at the same time, then we control for like the whole events and the supply side, and then we just see that kind of they look the same. So, and then the other thing is, which is different, is like that for us, instead of just taking 10 minutes as a session, as like, and then trying to do like 100,000 trajectories, which are just 10 sessions, we just very slowly over weeks, we just have like a few users and looking at them, but it's millions of minutes watch. And then what we find is that, okay, in this graph, so one is like the user, like this gray one, this is the actual user. We don't do anything here. This is what we observe from Wilson panel. And then we just group them based on members of the center community. And then these are the members of far right. And then some of them are heavy user of far right, medium, and then they watch far right. Most of the consumption is far right, but it's like that the absolute term is not as big. And then these are the users who just go through one of these and just selecting something randomly, for example, from sidebar. So what we see is like that if they select something randomly, then actually they are more steered back towards center. And then the hypothesis here we have is that maybe it's just a supply, because we saw in the first study 2 days ago that anyway, like there's a lot more center and left and right content compared to extreme. So that can be one reason. And then the other thing is like that it seems like in the ranked item, there's a lot of moderate content. So if you just choose something randomly, you have a good chance of hitting something which is closer to the center and moderate.
This almost looks like the recommendation system is not working. Like,
I don't think we have more and more studies. It's not that it's not working, it's like that it has a mix. So the recommendation algorithm has a mix of some item that you like, also some random other stuff. I think it's more of that. It definitely you're watching Ben Shapiro, you have more Ben Shapiro than me, but there's a bunch of Ben Shapiros and then there's a bunch of like Fox News and CNN and ABC. So that's the point, I think.
Might be the optimal strategy is not to present the 10 most likely videos.
Yes,
but
I think that's what YouTube
some
is
kind
doing.
of diversified portfolio, such that you are most likely to click on more and more.
They are putting a bunch, which is really, really similar to your history and mix it. So it's, they are not purely going into like just purely rank based on what is the closest to your feed.
Could it be that 60 steps are not enough for the algorithm to learn to go?
I don't think so, even 30 was enough. And then because for all of these decision makings, we did all the pilot, 30, 60, 120, and then we decided that it seems like 60 is good enough. Yeah, but yes, for every decision, we have to just think of like how we can.
One clarifying question, what time period was this, what year?
2023 December, I think. It was December of 20 something, 1 or 3. I think it was 3.
Because I know that like the conversations around algorithms have evolved from
Oh, yes.
like, just giving you what you want to like, okay, let's inject some randomness so that.
I think this is after that, like the recommendation algorithm said that like we tried to make it better. There was a time that it was going up when we looked at the data, and then they said that we made some change. This is after that, and I think that for this period, they didn't announce any big change. But this is after the time that through observational data, we also saw that like the consumption of far right is increasing.
But like
Decreasing, sorry.
Since the politics here, wondering like how big the persistence in the time series is, right? Like you just inject like 60 cat videos, how many cat videos are you gonna get afterwards? Or
I think for me, instead of all the hypothetical scenario, I'm very much interested in like, this is you.
I'm just trying to understand the mechanics of the recommendation algorithm, like just beyond like, is there like a particular thing to the politics here?
Some sense of sort of benchmark.
I think that's the whole discussion of yesterday as benchmark. I'm like that with benchmark. That's
But not benchmark is an objective function, but benchmark is a just understanding like quantitatively what does the recommendation algorithm
I think
learn.
you want to study that API, maybe is the most efficient. You just in API, you just provide a video ID, and then regardless of history, personalization, it just give you a ranking. And that's where I guess that can be like purely recommendation algorithm. So you can study how algorithm is working. What I'm more interested in is in like the experience of real user when these things have been deployed, and then you have your own interests and characteristics. Yeah. But actually, all the
just
field
last point on that, right? Like my question is like, if I watch 60 cat videos, do it then still go down to 0 cat videos right after? Which I would find surprising, but it's kind of the equivalent you're showing us here.
I think I have a study with synthetic behavior that we can see that how, yeah. It will show you
Is that the right interpretation? Because like, I mean, the striking graph, right, is the panel D.
Yes.
And it seems consistent with something like the top video is not a far right video, but the second video is. And the user clicks on the second video, but the algorithm is choosing the first video. And I like your cat video question is sort of hinting that like maybe there are no cat videos. But I think what this is suggesting is there are the cat videos, they're just not the top ranked. And so it will probably always show you one cat option from now
But it
on.
basically goes down to 0 for everything right after.
I think an average is like after like 4 steps, it's very close to moderate content. And it's on average. But I think, yes, there is some personalization, but the point is to what extent. And I think that at YouTube, what it's trying to do is like that, just give you like some diversity. So they don't purely think of like everything which is 100% close to what you have been watching. And yes, this is just like looking at the distribution and the whole, and then to see as the biggest difference is like that this group will watching more, and now like there's still a lot of far right when they choose randomly, but the average is now going toward the same. This one is also like, for me, is the second experiment is like that we observe this behavior people stay in like their community, as like your community is like that you are getting more, the majority of your news from each of these categories. And then we want to know that like, is the algorithm doesn't let you go, or is it that if you change your mind, then how many steps it will take for you to just actually become a member of the other community. So you are a member of far right, and then you change your mind, and then you keep clicking on center videos, and then we want to know, can you actually jump to the center? So here we just take a far right user, and this far right user, we create a digital twin, and then this is the real user. This is what the far right user has actually done, experienced, and then we just say that we assume that at this point, you started to thinking, you know, I'm done. I want to watch all the center content. And then we just take the trajectory of the center user. And this is also like a real user with all the heterogeneity that it has with non-news stuff. And then we just say the bot to just watch this content. And then here we just collect the sidebar recommendation. And then we just look at the score, the average score of like these 30 recommended items. And then we see that for about like at most like 30 videos, after 30 videos, what we see is that now like your sidebar is more shifted toward the center. We see that there is still like, perhaps I don't know like how long would it take for this to go away, but we can see that the algorithm will let you to just go more toward the center. I think what it says is that this is an average, so you keep seeing far right content in your feed. So that's why someone says that like, okay, I watched like all this extreme Breitbart content, and then for the last 30 days, I was trying to click on center content. Still, I have some far right content in my feed, which it says, yes, you will still have some stuff, which that's a discussion of like, should the algorithm learn that never recommend you such items? But to some good extent, like it will shift what you are seeing on the sidebar.
Why is it falling in the learning phase for the counterfactual bots? Like prior to the zero line also there is.
It's just the smoothing. Yeah, that's just the artifact smoothing. Yes.
Clarifying question, the steps are the number of videos, and in terms of, that's correct, right? And in terms of time, how much time, like, how long are they watching these 30 videos?
Same as the real user.
Yeah, but.
Oh, for us, it just took about like 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yes.
Pretty spread out.
Yes. And yeah, so. Yeah, and then I think this is just like one example of like just trying to see again, when deployed, when people are interacting, is it just the dominant like a story that we are hearing that, okay, this is the algorithm, this is the algorithm. I don't like what you think, but my understanding is that if it was just the algorithm, then I, you know, like even if I was clicking randomly, then the things like what I've been exposing to would be way more, you know, like populated with the far right content. And so that's what you're seeing like that, again, like just if you just get away from purely studying the recommendation algorithm, the evidence that you see is that like there's a big role from the demand of the user. And so it goes to the story of like the first as we talked in the talk on Tuesday, first we look at the prevalence, and then when we found that, okay, there is just a small group, they need to be a study because it's not good. And then we looked at like, what are the methods that can help us to disentangle the influence of algorithm from human choice? And also like the other studies that we are trying to look at is the more of like supply demand story, which when we talk with people from YouTube, they're like, you cannot really study supply and demand on YouTube because like the content stay there forever, and it would be very difficult to truly see like which one was intriguing the other one. So anyway, like this one, I don't think that we can easily study. We are just comparing simply consumption and production for this side to see what is the role of consumption production. But I think what I wanted to say is like, this is for us just a tool to help us to understand the contribution of different role. And that's the next point of like, if we could understand this is actually the algorithm, then their solutions are easy. So in our next study, what we did was like all the rankings that we have collected, we closely look at them and then we re-rank them. And then here we try to say, push back the conspiracy content or for example, re-rank them based on what is closer to the user interest. So it's a better match. So I think you asked that like, so a recommendation could do a better job to rank the item based on your interest. So here we tested that and then we said re-rank. So it's purely better in engagements and like better next click prediction.
From the results, it does seem that, like say, treated the up next bot kicks on a nice video and then the algorithm sort of re-optimizes. It does look like it's weighting nicer videos more positively.
Yeah, that's what I think. That's what when we look at the recommended items, that's what we are seeing.
But is that something, do you know if YouTube is already optimizing for that, or is it that nicer videos are more likely to go viral and so?
Oh, I don't know, but I think in terms of like what we are seeing, teams are toward the fact that like it's not purely optimized for engagement, because if the ranking would be purely based on what is similar to your history, we would see that like when we re-rank based on that, then we see that far right content would actually come to the top. But they are distributed over the 30 ranked item. So you had a question?
Yes, have you looked at the users' expressed preferences over their content and watching? Because sometimes this diverges significantly through real preferences through engagement.
I'm not sure about you. Like we don't have any interaction with these real users. We just observe what they do and then we just create a digital. We don't get any signal, and that's the whole point that I don't know what was their preference. I'm just estimating like you watched this, perhaps you liked it or not. If you liked it, that's what we are saying. If you actually look for it, then you would find it. If it was random, then we will see there's less of like extreme.
Yeah, there's some very notable cases. For instance, I know Molly Russell, who viewed 20,000 images of suicide, self-harm, and depression on Pinterest and Instagram. She was 16, 17 years old. So I would say that's an expressed not preference for that content, but it looks like a revealed preference.
So you're saying that scenario is a version that somebody was.
It's an extreme example.
Of
Another
like
example
a lot
in the alignment problem by Brian Christensen is an alcoholic who's in recovery and is shown advertisements for alcohol.
So I think definitely they incorporate more of what you are watching, and then. But the point is like it's a mix, and also I should say that I'm also very careful to say how the algorithm is handling news is the same as how they are handling misinformation, conspiracy. Like all of this is very different.
But I guess the question is like, when you ask people what they want, is it the same thing as what they click on?
No, I think there's like a few study to say that like we have shown if you ask people what they want before interaction, they say something. And then they just go suddenly find themselves on clicking on whatever is in front of them. And that's more of like the future of like, okay, just everything that we do in CS is just like next click prediction. And then we don't care about the content, context, user, age, gender, race, like nothing. We just say maximize the engagement, maximize the click prediction. So we just predict that we do a better prediction and then we are doing a better job.
Is that literally taught as being ethically neutral in computer science departments today?
I don't know if they know the word ethic much, but yes, I don't like it.
That's like.
That's not a concern, it's like that.
It's
It's just an engineering job, I think. There's like a, you ask me to just predict.
That's actually.
No, it's not good. No, it's not good, but I think that's. I'm very excited to talk about this re-ranking because that's the next generation. Now that we have LLM, we feel that we can do a wonderful job into guessing what you want to watch and then make a really good match, which is really bad. We see that the consequences of that.
Can I just check on, in terms of the research you have done, the arms experiment, was one of them randomly selected from
Yes.
the landing? So did you think about weighting that towards arms? The reason I ask is, I mentioned that in the keynotes, the importance of ranking on a page and different aspects of YouTube. And we're published in a few months, we've got a heat band thing. And I think I'm surprised in the things that get its weight are top left. If that looks exclusively, that's where people look. So I just wonder whether if you did entirely randomly,
We did.
that's not maybe very
Yeah.
accurate.
So, yes, we just, like we had limited resource into like how we choose these. And then our first study was like just go pure random. But definitely we could have more of like a better decision rule as like that. Okay, more
Just
like,
weight them by
yes,
decision.
exactly. We could fix that. We could weight them, but for us, let's just go very, very extreme case of like, I don't care at all, just pick something random. Yes, but I think there's a lot of other arms that need to be like this. So what we did is like, the reason that we looked at this study was we could see the storm of LLM recommendation algorithm, and then they were showing that they are doing even a much, much better job into predicting like what you would click on. And then we were again go back to the question, but what are you doing? We are already saying that's not good, that is pushing a lot of like similar content to your feed. And why we are still keep pushing for more and more, like personalization.
So sorry, so the LLM-based re-ranking is also purely sort of based on behavioral data.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the idea is just it's basically a better.
Yes. So what we do is like we say this was exactly what our user watched, and then this was what was recommended, and then we saw that it seems like the recommendation is not doing a perfect job because they are not much on the up next. And then we just say that like, let's just grab one of the techniques that like other computer scientists have developed, and then we just say re-rank as they claim. Then this re-ranking make the top item closer to the user history. Yeah, and then we want to show that like what they are testing their model is on Netflix video. And then we say that like it's very context dependent. You apply it for a far right user, you see there's a lot of harm. There's a push toward like getting more and more conspiracy far right content. But mostly these papers have been tested on benchmarks for Amazon, Netflix, and then like some entertainments. So they don't care that like there are like other use cases that it can harm some social problems. And then the point is like that we say, okay, there's some part for the algorithm and then how you can make the algorithm better or worse. And there's a part for the user. And that's why we say that then we better understand that the user also has a good contribution. Then it goes to the David Rand's study of like persuasion, how we can correct the algorithm. And then so I will just continue on this side of the algorithm. And then for this one, I want to just like in 5 minutes finish this side. But so what we said is like that, okay, LLM assisted ranking, we can do a better job into recommending you item which is closer to what you are interested in, and then a lot of like state of the art, like algorithms are here. And then the idea of re-ranking is that we cannot apply LLM from scratch. We cannot have a corpus of billions of videos. And then, like LLMs anyway, like just number of tokens and everything. You cannot just fit in everything to the recommendation algorithm. There are very small studies, again, just going through benchmark. But in the real world, what they do is like that we just say that algorithmically, there is a smaller set of items. And then we do a re-ranking on top of that with LLM, so it's more cost efficient. So it's like layering on top of the traditional recommendation algorithm that we cannot trash in the real world, and then having like a lightweight re-ranking by LLM. And then we tested different prompts. We said that let's just say that look at the user history and make a better re-ranking so it's closer to the user interest. And then we just say that, okay, be mindful of extreme content, and then try to diversify. When you're looking at the content, diversify as that, don't make it very close to user.
On this re-ranking thing, this is sort of building on the diversification idea earlier, but wouldn't it be natural to say that between, say, the green, yellow, and red on the right, you want those to be the ranking probabilities conditional on them not clicking on the blue, rather than the unconditional ranking probabilities? You see what I'm saying? I'm not sure the right objective is that the second one should be the second most likely unconditionally. I think it should be the first most likely conditional on not clicking the first one.
Could be,
I think it.
because there's information in not clicking the first one, right?
Yeah, I mean, if the first two are Ben Shapiro videos, that's not actually very efficient, even if you're pretty confident the person likes Ben Shapiro. So there's, I think there's something more subtle going on.
I think what I can say is that here we didn't try at all to make an optimization. All we are trying to do is that, let's say that we do a better job. It's not the best job that we could do. What we are trying to do is that we want to re-rank so it's closer to user history. And then this is something that the other papers or the other research scholars have developed. And then we don't try to optimize, find any algorithm. We just simply say, just take one of them randomly, one of the existing ideas, and then just do a better job of bringing items which are close to your history on top. And it's by design, because I don't care about the best. I just care that I just make it closer to the user history. And then other one is trying to say if the algorithm can actually, if this LLM with all the power of understanding the context better can help. So it's kind of we are testing that they can be used again for pushing toward more and more personalization, but given the power that they have to do more personalization, optimizing for engagement, also this understanding of the context can help that do something for social good, for the well-being of the user, and use that understanding to diversify. So we are just trying to test these two ideas, but the whole motivation is that talking to the computer science audience as that just don't push purely with this one, and then take into account all other side effect which comes from doing more and more personalization. But the other thing is that we have a case study of YouTube, and it seems like YouTube, when we look at it, YouTube is already doing some randomization perhaps in their ranking. So they have a mix of content there. And so here, what we see is this is the baseline prompt, which is optimizing. So optimizing is not a good word. It's just trying to do a better job into bringing content similar to user history. And then this is more of a regularized version that we say that okay, care about the user history and then try to match closer to the user history, but also try to diversify, push back the conspiracy content. And then this one, what it's showing is like that how much overlap exists at the topic level between the history and the item here. So this one is YouTube. So in fact, I don't know why, but for YouTube, what we see is like that at the top rank item, 60% of the time, the topic is matched with the last 4 viewed videos. So it's like only 6% of the time. So like somehow they intentionally, I guess, don't push that like the items that you see at top is exactly too similar to what you had been saying. And then when we have like these version that we say, okay, make like bring on top, promote the content which have the similar topic, then we see that it goes up to 70%. So I don't have any explanation how, but I'm like that. This is what YouTube actually shows in the recommendation. It's not very much 100% what you are watching.
But even within the topics, I guess in Max's point in my talk, there might be increased mismatch within topics too, right? So, like, are you basically? I guess I'm asking what the topics are. Like, are they broad, like political, or are they more?
Okay, we just look at the news. We just think of the news side, and then we just go topic level, and it's like we just say that for the news, is it? We have about like 16 topics. And then we say like abortion, immigration, election, and then so on. And then we just say that, okay, the last 4, this person has been watching immigration, and then on top there's immigration, 60% of the time it's happening. And then for the rest, this top rank was not actually immigration.
The tone of how immigration is being covered could be different.
Yeah, no, of course.
So then I'm wondering if the treatment increases a mismatch also.
Oh, yes, like pushing, yeah. We look at, we actually, the next is like we look at the partisan score. And then again, it's not framing, but the partisan score. And then what we see is that like, if this was a real user and the average in the recommendation, this was the score for a real user in the scale of like 0 to 100 for the far right user. This was the average for what user saw. This is the average in the recommended items. And then this is YouTube. And then what we see is that like this treatment side as like that show them the stuff which is closer to what they like actually brings on top the stuff which is closer in the partisanship. So it makes, and then we argue that there's 2 dimensions. One dimension is like topic-wise is closer to what you watch, but also at the same time from the dimension of ideology is closer to what you watch, this is not something that we want. And then this is the regularized version that we just say, okay, it's not that difficult. At the same time, also when you are instructing the prompt or like using LLM, you can also have LLM to try to push back, diversify, and demote conspiracy content. And then the point is like looking at here, we see that like it's doing a better job topic-wise. Then we go here, we see that like in the ideology dimension, it's close to the YouTube, to what YouTube is. But yes, this is a very small experiment to show that like this is where again the power of algorithm. This is how it's being used. Everybody is just focusing on this side. Everybody is just pushing for this side. By simply, you can just care a little more about like okay, just because LLM better understand the context, you can also incorporate more of like. You know, with the traditional recommendation algorithm, understanding the context is the problem. So you cannot say to your, let's say like graph-based recommendation algorithm to care about this topic or not, but you can actually conversationally through text, you can say LLM version, how to care about the content or not. And then we just see like compare YouTube and then the base LLM model. Then we see that like for YouTube, AUC and conspiracy content is like pretty much like way less than what we do with like a more optimized LLM model. And then if we go for a regularized, we see that like still you could do a better job. So AUC is lower when we have the regularized version of LLM. So YouTube is doing better compared to what could be done if pushing more for personalization, but also like you could do a little better if you just try to push down the conspiracy content. And then, yeah, I just want to say that like very similar to the talk for yesterday, the whole idea for our studies is like that we don't want to study these algorithms and platforms in isolation. Through benchmarks, what we are trying to do is like that we want to understand when they are deployed and then in the social context, when they human and AI, they interact, how we can study what are the harms that can pop up from this interaction.
Is that your study?
Are those your
That
studies
is
that were being criticized?
No,
CNN. The last one is that your study, not the slam.
maybe. Don't remember. It was covered some.
But I mean, you're totally right that it.
There are not many studies that they say that YouTube is doing a good job, so it's very much possible. This is ours.
How much attention your study gets, often a function of what the result is.
So-
Which is kind of problematic.
Yes,
Well,
so specifically the second study that had a heavy focus on the preference side, that we were saying that like, okay, there's a big contribution to user choice. There was a weird silence after that, that everybody was suspicious. And then a few study came after that, that they say that, oh, TikTok, YouTube, all of this pushing, and then definitely. But I think it really depends on like the design, that at the same time period, we had two papers both published in PNAS. One of us was saying that it's pushing, the other one was saying that, no, if you actually wouldn't go with your preference, the chance would be that algorithm help you to diversify. And then they were same time period in terms of studying the algorithm. So one of us should be perhaps wrong. And yeah, and then, so yes, this is the whole idea, like, I know it's not perfect, but the whole problem here is that like, we are like, if we just rely on observational data, when we want to see this product is deployed and people are interacting, one way is just going with observational to see what is happening. But then we want to better understand the mechanism. It's just the population, and then they are always falling into the rare group of users. And then it happens over the time as we interact. It doesn't happen in the first interaction. So there are many complications. And the other part is like for human experiments, we don't want to bring people to the lab and just have them to perform different tasks to better understand like how their choices and algorithm design can impact. So, and that's why that we are thinking that the digital twin, as I think what someone mentioned, that's kind of the future of like how we can study the platform in the context, in the real world interaction, in the social situation. But at the same time, what we are hoping for is that it can answer more of the questions for vulnerable users. For example, we are looking for the same idea of like harmful content in terms of how it's impacting their mood, and mostly like for teenagers or like younger generation. And also we are looking at the cancer patient, and then we are seeing like that as they are searching for cancer content, how the algorithm is reacting. We are seeing that there's a lot of recommendation through the ads more than the platform as like the content from content creators. So there's a flow of ads for these patients, and then we want to see like what is the role of algorithm, what is the role of user, what is the role of search, and then through different arms we can actually test this. Or like another, and then here the thing is that these are like we don't want to have real experiments with cancer patients and to see that like how they search is changing the dynamic here. We tried for early childhood. We are seeing that there's more and more engagement or like consumption for 2 years old. The parents, they just give them an iPad and say, see and watch them. And there's a developmental effect into like that, the language development delay, and then which will cause in later years like depression. And then here these digital twins are helping us to provide recommendation for the parents as like how they can change the feed for their children. So in future, like there's less of exposure to the harmful content. And for all of this, the content matter a lot, because if your kid is watching something which is fast paced and not educational, that's a different story compared your kid is watching something that has like engagement with the caregiver. But the last one is like that, how we can do this for conversational AI, because it's like a whole other problem of for conversational AI, the complexity comes into like there's a chance is pretty low for how we can observe the behavior. Some part which like is very important in such a studies, like it should be based on the real user, so we can get the behavior of the real user either through data like panels that like that's something that I guess maybe you are more familiar with. And then whenever we don't have access to the panel, or whenever it's like that there are, when we look at the Nielsen panel, there's very few population that they are cancer patients. So we can find very small group of users who are cancer patients, and then also they have this specific cancer. So what we do here, we just go through data donation, for example. So again, I would just skip through like these studies. We just go through data donation, and then people can download their TikTok, their Netflix, their YouTube, their ChatGPT history, and then we just get their like what the trajectory that they have been interacting with the platform. We base all the studies based on personalization of the real user, and then we just digging into the content as understanding in what context, what is harmful for someone. Because again, it depends on the context if something is harmful for a user or not. And then for all of these studies, we go through the phase of for all of these studies, it goes to like when we have real users, we create these ARBs, and then we can have RCT for more vulnerable population. And then lastly, and then again, this one is more of like a very synthetic user, and maybe we don't give up on this side of the story to go with synthetic. This one, a user has been searching for mental health content and saying that I feel depressed. And then the other user was like that, seeking for more help as like that, I'm sad, show me something helpful. And then, or I need help. So like, I'm sad, I need help, or like that, I feel depressed. And then we would see that for both of these search initiated interaction, we try to mimic different behavior as someone actively clicking on mental health content, someone after the search says that like the passive viewer just passed through everything with an equal viewership or duration. And then some user who would say, okay, I did a one-time search, I don't want to see any more mental health content. And then we could compare that, like again, in very extreme side of the story, you are very engaged, you want to bypass the content, or you are passive observer. The only result that I want to mention here is that user initiated some interest through search and then keep bypassing and saying, I don't want to, like don't pausing on the mental health content. But after 7 days, we see still a non-zero amount of harmful content, mental health related content, suicidal content as some example. And then the question was like, in this context, it should go to zero. Any non-zero can be harmful for the user. And that's one of the cases of like, yes, like somebody is at the risk of harm and suicide, they search something, and then from there, the algorithm will continue to have some non-zero number of harmful content for these users. And then lastly, I wanna conclude with conversational AI as the new era of like how we wanna audit this. And then we don't want this thing to happen that there's a real user and then suddenly someone thinks is a perfect business idea. I will create these chat bot therapies. And then this is, again, before truly understanding if they have understanding into how to react to the patient in real world. We test them through benchmarks, and then we just create this, like app and sell it to the real patients. This is a practice. And then what happens is like that a few people are harmed, and then we say that, okay, let's just now go back and see what has happened, what goes wrong. So here, what we are trying to say is like, we need to shift this dynamic. How, again, with the idea of digital twins, or like maybe like synthetic or simulated users. And then what we are trying to do is like that we have the doctors at first, they interact with the simulated patients. And then we, through the feedback we get from the doctors, we just create more and more realistic simulated patients, to the extent that through the Turing test, people cannot distinguish, is it a real patient or is it a synthetic patient? And then, so we start from here, we get feedback from the actual practitioners, and then we talk with patients about like, how do they feel about the answer which is coming from simulated patients. Then when we have this data through supervised or preference-based alignment, we try to just make this more realistic as a simulated patient.
Is this something you want to do or something you did?
We are here. And the next step is here. So why we want simulated patients? Because then we are saying that these are practices which are feasible. Again, going back to the yesterday talk, there's like, before putting things into deployment, you can create a scenario that looks realistic. Instead of benchmarking, which is static, you have a bunch of prompts, you just send it, and then you get the response to say, is this response safe or not? We want to have these simulated patients to just have a more dynamic interaction, continue multi-turn interaction, and then audit basically the system. So we have the simulated patients.
That have humans read the resulting interactions. Or...
We will have the human for annotating the outcomes. Yes. But it's more, again, it's still much better compared to one shot, one prompt, one turn, through a bunch of predetermined benchmarks. But this is something that we are trying to say, that benchmarks need to be more dynamic compared to a one shot, everybody using them. Yeah, and then I'll think this was supposed to be the conclusion slide, but it was saying these are with all these challenges that like we have less access to the API, single platforms don't help much. When you look at multi-platform, you learn a lot. And your conclusion will turn around as into like, oh, like if a user is not watching this specific platform, the problem is not solved because the user is getting similar content from other platforms. And then the last thing is like the difficulty of us studying the user side because of the feedback loop. I think my problem with the new studies from Meta is like that. This user is interacting with their platform for 10 years. And then they come and then they change the feed for 2 months. And then they are proud as like that they are doing better than these poor researcher with no resource who can do it with probably feed in 2 days. And then we prove that like changing the feed doesn't change anything, doesn't change user behavior. I don't know that what is the correct answer, but all I know is that like this feedback loop was happening for years and years. I've been interacting with whatever Facebook or YouTube has been recommending to me. So with just changing my feed in a month or 2, I don't think that you have enough evidence that like it wouldn't make any difference in what is like they call it, like in the actual preference or behavior of the user, attitude of the user that they are measuring. So this feedback loop, we are right like in the middle, and it's too late to just change it a little bit and see how user will change their behavior. And yeah, I think I can stop here. Thank you.